This episode of the podcast is brought to you by New Bloom Labs.
There are many labs out there that can't resolve the various THC molecules. New Bloom Labs can deliver precise analysis of Delta 8, Delta 9, and Delta 10. They test intermediate manufacturing materials such as crude, isolate, and distillate, just to name a few. They also test final consumer products, which include edibles, topicals, beverages, cartridges, pre-rolls, and kief. The guys at New Bloom Labs are the real deal, with locations in Tennessee and Texas and more to come soon. New Bloom Labs provides precise, accurate analysis and the best turnaround time in the industry. They always provide next business day turnaround on potency tests and 1 to 2 business day turnaround on most toxin screenings. They're ISO certified and DEA registered, so you know their science is first rate. Most cannabis producers are frustrated with their third-party labs, but you don't have to be. Call New Bloom Labs at 844-TEST-CBD or visit their website at newbloomlabs.com. Superior science, rapid results, New Bloom Labs. Hello everyone, Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Mike McDonald, president of Ammonite. Start recording.
Yeah.
Good with that?
Yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Awesome. So Mike, tell me, where are you based?
In the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, east of Oakland-ish. So Jetty Extracts, which is kind of our sister company, is based right in Oakland with a lab, and then I'm working from home most of the time these days, a little further east, but yeah, San Francisco Bay Area.
Got you. Okay, nice. And I'm sure the weather is nice and sunny during this time of year.
This is interesting, man. This is the time we get some much needed rain, a little cold. It's great. I mean, I'm from back east originally, so I'm used to some serious winters, but you know, cold in Northern California is kind of a joke compared to back east, but yeah, but it's good. It's nice, and we get some beautiful sunny days in the middle of the winter, so it's great.
Yeah, I can totally agree. I went to college in Pennsylvania, and man, was that a shock in terms of just the climate and how cold it can get, you know?
Yeah.
And then
I went to college. That's where I'm from. I went to college in Pennsylvania too. Grew up in Philly, so yeah, I get it.
Not University of Penn? Is that where you went?
No, I went to Penn State back in the day, which was kind of insane. 50,000 people in the middle of nowhere. Like big, like you couldn't get a more kind of central casting major college if you tried, right?
Exactly. Yeah, State College. That was right up the road from the university that I went to. I went to Bucknell.
Oh, sweet, man. A little smaller, but very cool.
Yeah. So cool, man. Awesome. Well, hey, for those listening, just a little background. I have Mike McDonald on the show today. He's the president at Ammonite, which is an innovative consumer products and brands company, home of the patented Dablicator, which is an oil applicator, and Jetty CBD, which you just mentioned, Mike. So before we get into the company, I want to talk a little bit about your background. I know that you have experience in consumer products, manufacturing, finance, marketing, sales, over a 30-year span. So tell me, what got you interested or excited about the cannabis industry?
Well, you know, like everybody else in this industry, I mean, I haven't heard one similar story. You know, there's guys that have come from, you know, growing weed and slinging weed from high school all the way up to Wall Street finance guys. You know, my background is pretty eclectic. I mean, I've been a hustler since I was, you know, in high school. My family is from, my parents are immigrants, albeit from Canada. I mean, not that hardcore, but they came down to the States in the 60s for a $5 an hour job for my dad. And he always, you know, instilled in us just working hard and hustling and, you know, being entrepreneurs because we didn't know anything else. So I went to college. I went to Penn State. I studied international studies and Japanese, actually. I had a carpet store there. I had a hot dog cart there. I did I rented students out for odd jobs. I ran the bus trips down to Fort Lauderdale for spring break, right? So I was always hustling, making money. You know, I had to pay my way through college for the most part. And when I graduated, I was just like, man, I am not going to work for Procter and Gamble like everybody else. Everybody else, I'm not going to go stock, Advil on the stores of, Pathmark.
Right.
So I jumped on a plane and went to Taiwan, one-way ticket to study Mandarin Chinese, because I just wanted to get out, and I knew that if I got out and did something cool and international, a couple of years, I'd kind of have a different perspective. So I spent a couple of years in Taiwan, studying Chinese, but I got into the bicycle business, which kind of launched my career in consumer products, more on the hard goods side. Like I've never really been in the consumables business per se. I worked for Giant Bicycle, which ended up becoming the largest bicycle brand in the world at the time. They were just making bikes for somebody else, like white label for Schwinn, Specialized.
This was in Taiwan still?
Yeah, in Taiwan. I was like the little blonde-head kid in the middle of a sea of Taiwanese business people, and it was really, really crazy. I taught English. I did translation, not so much translation from Chinese to English or English to Chinese, but from we were doing a lot of business with Schwinn, and there was like all this crazy stuff going on. So I would help them translate the communication back and forth. And it was just really a trip. I just kind of fell into this job. That, as I mentioned, launched me into hard goods and manufacturing and really understanding what it takes to take a product to market from research and development and so forth. And I became what we like to call, even in the cannabis industry, a more of an operator, right? There's like financial engineers that have this tremendous amount of experience taking companies public and raising funds. And then there's those of us that are really focused on product development, manufacturing, figuring out to get a startup from, nothing to a product. And that was kind of my career trajectory. I mean, I'm a little older than you. I'm 55. So, have had a long career of entrepreneurial activities, like with the bicycle business. I came back to the States and ended up moving to California and was involved in other sporting goods startups. And
so let me pause you right there. So it sounds like you learned a lot in Taiwan in terms of like on the manufacturing side, like you said, research and development, product development, go to market. And so was there outside of business, like, what culturally did you experience, and what were some of the things that really stuck with you when you came back to California and that next move?
It was, living over there was really amazing. There's, of course, the Chinese culture. And by the way, for those of you that are unaware, what the interesting thing about Taiwan, especially back when I was there, is it was this little island that was off the coast of China, and it was the democratic island and the government that was going to take China back, because they kind of got kicked out of China in this communist revolution. So it was always this sort of temporary experiment that was going to one day take China back. That obviously never happened. But what was interesting is that sort of scrappy startup mentality. They became leaders in manufacturing and innovation. It's now where, there's my little cat. It's now where some of the most innovative technology occurs, bioscience, tech. So I learned about culturally what it means to be kind of an outcast and trying to get back into the race. And it was always also interesting is the international people that I met, expatriates. They were also this group of sort of misfits that were over in Asia, from England, from the US. And I just met this wide array of folks I don't think I would ever have met. So, began to enjoy different types of food, experimented in kind of some different types of spiritual experiences. And it was just an amazing couple of years right out of college.
That's awesome. When you say spiritual, are you talking more about like psychedelic experiences?
No, that was taboo there, man. Like, it was martial law when I was there. If you got caught with weed or anything back, and this is the late 80s, early 90s. But, there was just a lot of drinking going on. They had this product, there was kind of a under the radar drug called betel nut that was something you chewed, and it was natural. The taxi drivers would chew it all the time, and you would chew it and spit it out. It was like blood red. It was like really kind of crazy. So we got into that, and man, I'm 20, 21, right? I mean, we just sort of tore it up, and we'd go to Hong Kong, we'd go to the Philippines and Vietnam, because every couple of months we had to leave to kind of get our visa stamped again. So it was just an awesome, kind of like what I wanted. It was a break from going into the corporate world, which was really the trajectory that a lot of my colleagues coming out of college were on. So it was really just sort of set me up to kind of carve out a different path that I knew instinctively is where I wanted to go.
Right. I mean, while it's obvious, it's great to have education like at a university or college where you're learning within literature and research, but there's also that benefit of actually experiencing things yourself firsthand, and travel is one of those, right? So
Right.
as a 22-year-old out there, is that what you said, 22 or?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated. I graduated like 21, so I literally went out. Hey, can I take a quick break? I gotta let this cat out. Sorry.
Go ahead, no worries. I have 3 dogs. I totally get.
She's gonna meow. She's gonna meow for the whole time. I'm in this little garage. I converted into a studio, actually over COVID, which was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Sorry. So what were you saying?
No, same here. I had to convert my room into an office as well, so I get it.
Yeah.
COVID has made us do some pivoting for sure.
Right.
So Mike, so let's fast forward. So you talked about coming back to Taiwan. You're in California. So what's the next move after your bike endeavor?
Interestingly enough, I hooked up with a bike-related company in the bicycle helmet business. They had a factory in Mexico. I joined them. I was able to kind of help redirect their business. Inside that company, I started a business making bicycle packs, like panniers and clothing and that sort of thing. In Mexico back in the day, it was the maquiladora years where the government had just sort of opened up a relationship where you could do the labor in Mexico, and the kind of a shared. It was sort of a reason why they were trying to build up the relationship in North America so that companies wouldn't go to Asia. So I did that for several years, and we sold that company. I eventually moved up to Northern California and got involved with a ski-related business, little small company that was developed out of Stanford University called Atlas Snowshoe. And we sort of invented the modern kind of cool technical snowshoe, which you now see everywhere. Like if you've ever gone to Vail or Beaver Creek, we put snowshoe tracks up there. And, before Atlas came into being, it was like those big tennis racket kind of things. And we made it a real sport. I ran the sales. We went internationally. We went from really about $0 in revenue to over $10 million in 4 years.
Wow.
And we sold it to a bigger group and ultimately sold it to a publicly traded company that you probably heard of called K2 Sports.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I had other things in between, but that sort of helps explain my trajectory from hard goods, bicycles to helmets to clothing to snow sports. And I tried a little bit of software in between because I moved to the Bay Area and it just didn't work for me. I really like the tactile idea of creating a physical product, developing it, taking it to market, building relationships that way. REI, Eastern Mountain Sports, like working with major retailers.
I would imagine
Bay Area.
I would imagine it's totally different, right? I mean, you're still creating something, but on the software development side, it's not tangible, right? It's some type of platform or app or whatnot. And so I would imagine that the development process and the R&D and everything is completely different from one another.
Oh, sure, man. Like we're literally building out factories, fixtures. We're welding. We're stamping. And then, by the way, what was interesting is we were doing that. That's like mid 90s. We're doing that in San Francisco, right? You can't do it. It's all in Asia now. And the guys that developed it as a thesis project at Stanford, and it was really cool. We had 60 employees. We were stamping stuff out, boxing it up, shipping it around the world. it was really fun. It got me into a really fun industry, akin to the bicycle business, but like a little different. And when we sold that, I made a little bit of dough, and had just gotten married and was going to start a family. My family's background is real estate, construction and design. So I kind of had a little bit of a break, had a little bit of a nest egg, and I started buying houses and fixing them up and flipping them. And it was really cool because it allowed me to stay home, kind of help with the kids. Really, my wife's a dentist, so she was cranking going to work every day at her practice. And I really rolled about 10 years of just doing real estate development and having fun and, doing innovative things even inside the housing market. Like my team, we built the first LEED Platinum several houses in California. They're at the time the greenest, net zero homes produced in California. So even inside this sort of totally different business model, we're always trying to do innovative, kind of cutting edge things, just probably primarily so I wouldn't get bored. And, unless you have some specific questions there, that sort of parlays into how I got into the cannabis business, which sounds odd. I had joined a buddy of mine in another manufacturing business, kind of ran, this is in early 2000s where late 2000s when the market just crashed and kind of took a breather from real estate, and hooked up with a buddy of mine that needed some help growing his furniture business. Jumped in, helped him run it, grew from 20 people to 120 people. And in the process, sold our plant, our manufacturing facility, to the guys at Jetty Extracts. Jetty Extracts, one of the biggest old school cannabis extracts company in California. Just super cool guys. We were in this area in Oakland called the Green Zone, which is where everything was legal. And I think that cat got back in. That's funny. And we sold this amazing facility to them and got some equity in the company in the process to kind of do the deal. And I started advising to them while I was running this other business. Really cool group of guys. 3 founders, Nate, Rob, and Ron Gershoni, which had started Jetty in 2013 in San Diego, and they were growing and kind of needed a little bit of direction, and we're looking to do some fundraising. So I jumped in and helped, and then that became a full-time gig. And this is like 4 years later.
And so Jetty Extract started solely as a extraction lab. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the first companies to sort of create a brand. There was no brands. This is back in the pre-adult legalization days. California approved and then allowed adult recreational marijuana cannabis in January 2018. And these guys started Jetty in 2013. And they saw that the vape pen business was going to be the thing. You got to imagine back in 2013, vape pens really didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So they figured out a way to make really innovative extracts, primarily focused on vape, and grew their business, to become like a top 5 cannabis brand in California. And along the way, around 2016, 17, I jumped in to help with just some business planning and then some fundraising. And I really was having fun with it. Really loved this group of folks that had started it. And it was it was an innovative industry that the rules weren't written. And I really dug it. And I ultimately jumped in and ran the sales force for a couple of years, focused on the fundraising and really got a broad experience in the industry. And to kind of bring it full circle at some point, because we can chat a little bit about Jetty. Jetty had invented a product called the Dablicator oil applicator. And it was a patented device to deliver oil primarily to medical patients who can't smoke, don't necessarily like edibles. So you're able to, and I'm going to send you some. I apologize. I thought you had some.
No. I look forward to trying it. Thank you. Yeah.
I'll send you some CBD, some broad spectrum CBD, if you'd like.
I'm excited about that because what I've been doing is I've been actually, and I know that it's not fully mixing in my coffee, but I do sometimes put tincture, CBD tincture into
Right.
the morning. And I mean, when I looked at this product, I'm like, this is perfect. That's like the exact solution for that, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it was developed by the guys at Jetty. Another example of their innovation. They had started a program called the Shelter Project, which is this is back in 2014 when they had no money, but their sort of ethos was helping people out with medicine. Like cannabis was really a medicine. You know, people smoked it recreationally or did whatever, but there was a huge medical component to the cannabis industry pre 2018, and still is. Um, and they saw some of their patients, their cancer patients, which they gave free medicine to, over $1 million worth of free cannabis since 2014. Even though it's become more difficult to do it since it's become legalized, which is ironic. And they saw these patients really like dealing with these sketchy syringes, and they leaked, and there was no real way to get accurate dosing. So these guys invented the Dablicator, and it was just a Jetty product up until last year. And it's this really cool thing. If your guests can see it, go to Dablicator.com and you can kind of check it out. It's really cool. There's some videos on it, but it's this sort of spin and click dosing device that allows you, you know, it carries a 1.2 milliliters or a gram of whatever you want to put in it, distillate, pure live resin. 710 Labs, which is one of our partners, is coming out with an RSO, Rick Simpson oil, which is heavily focused on medical. You can put CBD in it, and it was this thing that Jetty had. It was a small part of our portfolio, but people were like, "Hey man, I really dig the Shelter Project. You guys are awesome, and man, that Dablicator is super cool." So that was just a part of Jetty's sort of portfolio. And I saw this opportunity. I was like, you know, we could take this product beyond Jetty. Like people dig it. We get calls all the time. Hey, can you get me 1,000 of those? I'll put my logo on it. I want to use it for my customers. So about about a year ago, I took on this little skunkworks project, which is kind of right up my alley, right? Like we're a 100-person company now, and the leadership needed from my sort of background was different. We had hired a bunch of great people to run Jetty. So I spun a company, Ammonite, out to focus on a CBD line, Jetty CBD, which I'll get you some, but this bigger opportunity, which was this innovative hardware that is a delivery device for oil and everything from medical to adult use. And it's been incredible. I mean, some of the biggest multi-state operators, some of the biggest brands in the country have either come on the platform or we're talking to them where we totally customize the product for them, packaging everything, and they can take their existing oils that they deliver in vape or tinctures, and in many cases these syringes, which don't work well and they're sketchy, and they can transfer it into Dablicator and like have this immediate, cool, fully baked product line that didn't exist before.
So y'all offer you offer white label services for other producers, right? To slap their logo on it, their own product, but then you also have your own proprietary like oil and stuff that's from the Jetty CBD line.
Yeah, I mean, and Jetty THC line. In many respects, Jetty is kind of my customer now, if you think about it that way. Jetty's one of my brand partners. So I sell them the hardware and the brand services, and then they fill the product. So, and that's another thing about Ammonite. And you may be familiar with the onerous tax scenarios on cannabis because it's a federally illegal drug. I mean, you can't write off normal federal costs around taxes. So because Ammonite is a non-plant touching company, we're able to run it like a normal business, like a helmet, like a bicycle helmet business or a ski business, where all our costs associated with the product are standard profit and loss, where we can bring in revenue, we can have costs, and then we have profit. We pay normal taxes. You know, companies like Jetty or companies in Texas, they have an effective tax rate of like 60% because they can't write off anything other than their cost of goods. Like they can't write off guys like me. They can't write off, marketing personnel. They can just write off the hardware and the oil. So Ammonite became this diversification opportunity for Jetty, both on the innovation and the IP side. There's major tax advantages for the company, and it allowed us to go beyond California and scale. So there's a variety of reasons, both business and sort of humanistic reasons, to take this product beyond Jetty and beyond California. But yeah, to answer your question, I guess you could call it white label. Yeah. Like if you had a brand, you'd contact me, you'd say, hey, Mike, I'm already doing a lot of oil and vape. I really love your product. Can you develop a branding opportunity for me in this product? And my team takes your brand, figures out what looks great on the hardware and the packaging, and then we supply you the whole kit of parts, which then you take your brand out to market in a new patented form factor.
So what's interesting that you said is about how I see the value add of operating and partnering with a company like Ammonite, because you said you're not plant touching, right? So you're not held to those standards that other cannabis companies and operators would face, like you said, not being able to write off tax deductions and other things, right? But
right.
I'm curious because it's great that you can do that, but I would think that if you're developing equipment or an apparatus that's related to the consumption of cannabis, you would fall under that category.
No, I mean, if you think about it this way, we're the picks and shovels of the cannabis industry, right? Like that's a term that people hear, but the background on that is the gold rush back in the 1840s. The guys that made a ton of money were not the gold miners. A few of them did, but Levi's came out of the gold rush industry. They had a general store where they made clothing, eventually jeans, for the gold rush guys. They sold them picks and shovels and pans to do their panning for gold. So that's what our product is. And there's other companies that are examples of it, like the PAX pods, the C-Cell 510. Devices, marketing and financial services. So as long as you're not touching the plant, you're able to sell things to that industry. And I sell them to CBD. I sell them to, there's some customers that are looking at the product for other homeopathic medicines. So yeah, I mean, we're not subject to the onerous oversight, taxation, licensing. So it's a really interesting but connected business. And I think what's important is because we came from the cannabis industry and the oil industry, we understand it. It's not just like some dude that invented a product that didn't have any connection to it. So we're constantly improving it. We get what your challenges are as a partner. So it's a really good fit. It's a really good fit for our skill set.
Right. No, it sounds like it. And, so let's talk specifically about the current state of the extract industry, right? So how has COVID and the pandemic impacted your business, if at all? And what is the future outlook for 2020 look like when it comes to extraction?
Well, extraction is still a major part of and let me speak specifically to California, because that's really my area of expertise. The rest of the country is a trip, because most states outside of California and Colorado, Washington, Oregon, they're fixed licenses. So there's only so many licenses that you can get, kind of like the old school taxi medallion. If you didn't have a taxi medallion, you couldn't run a cab in New York. Now there's Ubers everywhere, right? And that's where the market's eventually going to go. But in California, there's no really there's no really barriers to entry into the cannabis space. If you get a license, then you can grow, you can extract, you can have brands. So it's incredibly competitive in California. Probably one of the, if not the most sophisticated marketplace. And have you been to California and been into any dispensaries? It's amazing. It's like you're going into an Apple store for the most part.
I have more experience going to Colorado.
Right.
I haven't, so I'm familiar with the Colorado market for sure, but not California. Yeah.
it's similar to Colorado, and in many respects, Colorado has always been on the cutting edge of product, but the branding in California is so competitive that so that's kind of where it's gone. And what we've seen pre-COVID even is consolidation of these brands into sort of the more well-run businesses. And in many respects, it's unfortunate because some of the smaller guys have been getting squeezed out because in order to compete with these more sophisticated businesses that are well-financed, it's been challenging. There's a lot of effort to continue to keep community businesses and social equity businesses, people of color that have sort of been primarily impacted by the war on drugs. Jetty's involved with several of those, including Oakland Extracts, which is this amazing brand that's gaining traction that we partnered with. Local person of color invented brand. But, you know, extracts have grown, but before pre-COVID even, there was the big vape crisis, right? Back in 2019, if you remember.
Right.
A bunch of kids were getting sick, and that was really like garage-based people mixing up crap that wasn't legal. You know.
A lot of the vitamin E acetate, right?
Yep.
Found in, and the carcinogens found in these.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are just kids like who were just taking advantage of the popularity of vape. They made a lot of people sick. No regulations. That really impacted the vape business nationally, internationally. So we saw a big hit as an industry, and what's interesting, a move back to flower in 2019. So 2019 was a really difficult year for anybody in the vape business. 2020, it kind of recovered, but COVID obviously hit and everybody was impacted. Interestingly, cannabis became an essential business in California, at least, and I think nationally, because of the medical aspect of it. So our business has sort of done okay. A lot of the brick and mortar stores were very, very, it was very, very challenging for them. So there's been this huge push towards delivery, which kind of makes sense, right? Like delivery of cannabis to your door. I mean, right now, while we're talking, I could order, you know, a bunch of weed, and by the end of our podcast, it'd be at my front door in California.
Can you order me some too?
Well, I know a guy who knows a guy. Let's talk offline. So COVID has impacted everybody. I mean, even down to our manufacturing, right? Like we've had to stagger shifts. We've had to put things in place that protect our employees, our staff, which have been both really important but expensive. But it does feel like the cannabis industry has had growth year over year, even in 2020, but it's just been a weird year.
Yeah.
In some of the other states where you've got capped licenses, it's a whole different story. You've got 3 or 4 major players that dominate. Like in Florida, there's 3 players that have 95% of the market, which is kind of, I think, honestly unfortunate. It's kind of good for my business because I only have 3 targets to sell Dablicator to. But, you know, you've got 3 major brands in California that have 150 stores between the 3 of them.
Are they? Is one of them True Leaf?
Yeah, True Leaf, and they're all excellently run companies. True Leaf is one of them, but that's like, so consider that California has 500 people, 500 companies, 600, 800 companies in the cannabis industry, everything from grow to extraction to distribution to retail, and you can do any one or all of those in California. In Florida, in other states, you have to be fully vertical. You have to grow it, extract it, distribute it, and retail it. So every state is just different. And I think every state experienced COVID and even this vape crisis differently. But the reality is people want their weed, right? They need it for medicine or they want it for recreation. And the industry pivoted, I think, really well, and moved from, you know, what used to be a smaller component of the business, which was delivery, to now it's a massive part of the business, which has really kind of helped us get through this challenge.
You're in somewhat of a unique position in that you worked with you worked on the THC side, right, with Jetty, and then you moved to the CBD space as well. So tell me a little bit about what you've experienced in terms of like the challenges and barriers with the lack of consumer oversight from the FDA on the CBD side.
Well, there isn't entirely a lack of oversight, which is interesting. Is we sell Jetty CBD, and we got into Jetty CBD because Nate Ferguson, who's one of the founders of Jetty, knows oil. Like he knows extraction. He's one of the best guys, if not, in my opinion, one of the most experienced extraction guys in North America. So when we were looking as a business to diversify, right? Like when you've got all your eggs in one basket in California, we chose not to license the Jetty brand. We chose not to get distracted from focusing on the biggest market in the world. But we had me, who had some experience, like, hustling and doing some things nationally. I said, well, look, let me take this CBD product and take it beyond California. We hooked up with a great distributor called Green Lane. They're like the #1 head shop, smoke shop, vape shop distributor in the world. Created a partnership with them. So they did a lot of the heavy lifting for us because they had a CBD program. They knew the intricacies of what you could do in X state, what you could do in Y state. It allowed us to really just focus on bringing this really beautiful full spectrum, broad spectrum oil to market.
So what I mean is like challenges in terms of like outside competition, right? Like in my view, because there's no regulation, that has opened the doors for a lot of bad actors, right? And
right.
low quality and low cost product.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
And it's
I know where you're going.
Weeding out the guys that are doing well, right? So, a company like yours working with Jetty, partnering with these top brands, has it been a struggle to compete with these low cost guys that probably have little to no CBD in their product?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point, Kevin. I mean, the CBD space, said a little differently, is super crowded now, right? It's like snake oil in many respects. And we have a great product out there. We're partnered with a good distributor. We focused really narrowly with our Dablicator and this full spectrum oil and a vape product. We haven't gone into lotions and balms and all that stuff, which I use. Like I use Pop and Barkley's. Like Pop and Barkley's is an amazing company.
Yeah.
But I kind of saw the writing on the wall that the CBD space was crowded. A lot of stuff was going to get, there's going to be a shakeout over the next couple of years. So kind of focused very narrowly, picked a good partner. Frankly, are not putting a tremendous amount of resources behind that business right now until it all shakes out. But saw the advantage of having a diverse offering as a company. Like we got outside of California, we were building a brand in different states, even though it was Jetty CBD, kind of set us up to grow nationally once things became federally legal. Tested Dablicator outside of California in a different product, which is CBD. And then in that space, at one of the big trade shows called Champs, which is a big head shop, vape shop show, people are just flipping out over Dablicator. Like, man, dig your CBD, but this product is super cool. Could I get some for my oil? And kind of the light bulb went off and said, man, like we have a platform here. Like, and by the way, Jetty Extracts is the largest PAX partner in the world, right? So Jetty, we had a very, very deep experience on what a platform is. In other words, you had a form factor that was patented and unique. Then we put our oil in it, and we're one of a handful of key brands that only a handful of key brands that have that product. So we looked at the PAX platform and said, we could do this with Dablicator. Like nobody's doing something super cool, really innovative on oil delivery. And that's when we kind of shifted from CBD only, especially to what you're saying about the crowded space, and began to focus really hard on this unique applicator. And the challenges, I mean, I kind of dig them. I mean, my background is taking products nationally and internationally, right? Like in many respects, you're kind of hemmed in just being able to do California. So I was stoked. I was just like, let's go, man. Like, let's take this to the world. People dig it. Canada, the States, I'm getting inquiries from Mexico. And I can sell like without concerns to the FDA. And, we still work, we work with medical agencies to test all our stuff and so forth. But it was just like a more wide open opportunity that has been really exciting. Kind of back to my roots, right? Like I
Yeah.
used to take the bicycle business and the ski business nationally and internationally. So I was just like, let's go, let's do this thing.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me that you wouldn't shy away from a challenge like entering the cannabis space or navigating through that market, but then seeing the opportunity that to expand outside of that industry even too, right? You got a great applicator that can be used with different types of oils, not just CBD or
Right, right.
which is pretty incredible, man. And it's a blessing that, again, you kind of bypass all that red tape and regulation. So that's a perfect segue. What are kind of future goals and plans for the Dablicator in 2021? And what are the primary business priorities and focus areas for next year?
I think we want to just continue what we're doing. Signing up really strong partners and getting them onto the platform. And again, I come back to the platform, meaning like if we've got a handful of key, really well-respected brands in each territory that are delivering their oil product on the Dablicator oil applicator platform. Now we've got a real category in the stores, right? And instead of an item. So if you go into a dispensary in California now, instead of Jetty and Dablicator, you've got multiple brands, and there's a space on the shelf, and people go, oh, okay, I can take my oil this way. I can put it under my tongue. I can put it in my coffee or my tea. We have guys that have sushi parties where they mix it into their wasabi and have medicated sushi parties. So my goal is to kind of replicate that model in states in other states and in Canada. So my focus are on the multi-state operators, the GTIs, the True Leaves. We have a program with Certera down in Florida, which is one of the big three. And then really just sort of partnering with them to offer their innovative products in this new innovative platform, such that when you go into a store, there's 2, 3, 4, 5 brands on Dablicator, and it's now a category instead of a thing. Mm-hmm. So that's priority number one, really expanding across the U.S. and in Canada. We're not really too focused outside of those territories. And then continue to innovate. We've got multiple products in the pipeline in addition to this one sort of Dablicator 2.0 that we call it. I can't really talk about the innovation, but it's going to be super cool. Really just building a company, man, like building a business that provides value, provides opportunity to these brands to expand their reach, being a good partner, having fun, working with good people.
Right. Yeah. Everything that you love to do, right? And you've done for the 30 years.
Yeah. It's, hey man, life is short. I got, I'm a bit of I'm a bit of a gray hair in the business. I like to think I'm still in my 20s, but I got kids. My wife, we've been married over 20 years. Interesting. My wife's dental practice has been massively impacted by COVID, as you can probably appreciate. I mean, she's on the front line, working in people's mouths every day. I got teenagers, a senior in high school whose world has just been, you imagine like COVID being your senior year, right?
No, I mean, of course, there's so many people that have been affected, but like, I can't imagine being a high school student or even in college. And like, it's basically going to school with no friends, right? You're just on a Zoom call and turning in work like through email, like as if you have a corporate job. But yeah, it's gotta be tough, man.
Well, look, man, it's tough, but there's a lot. We're blessed, right? Like we can work from home.
Right.
We've got resources. I mean, one of the reasons I like what I'm doing, I've always liked, I like to create jobs and opportunities for others. And it's pretty cool that we, Jetty has 60 plus employees. I've grown some businesses to over 100 people, but it's pretty hardcore, man. There are people that are hurting out there. I mean, restaurant workers, retail workers, people that are just like, what am I going to do? Like, and these stupid fights in Congress trying to get people set back up. So
I know. And then you mentioned all the people still unemployed also, right? I mean, since the pandemic hit in at the end of March, I mean, there's a lot of people that's been affected. You're absolutely right, man.
So kind of segue into, I can grow my businesses and provide opportunity and provide paychecks for people. That's pretty cool, right? Like kind of talking about, my age and my place in my career. I want to work with good people, and I want to provide value to my customers and to my, and to my staff. So that's kind of the ethos of what we're trying to do.
Well, that's a beautiful ethos. And speaking of that ethos, you touched on a little bit of your community engagement efforts. So what is the Shelter Project? Tell us a little bit about that.
Shelter Project is, and if you go on either Dablicator.com, there's a little button to check out Shelter, and on JettyExtracts.com, there's also a shelter button, and it's just this really cool program. Like Nate Ferguson, one of the founders of Jetty, he's the product guy I mentioned earlier. His lady Lindsay, she just had this passion around helping people with cancer. Interestingly, how Dablicator really came to be is that they had a friend with brain cancer that was in the hospital, and he wasn't able to eat. He certainly couldn't smoke, and he wasn't eating. He was losing a ton of weight. So they began to bring him cannabis oil, but like in a jar, and it helped him start to eat again. And he's still alive today. This is freaking 7-8 years ago.
Wow.
But in the process, they saw that sublingual consumption or in food or in tea of cannabis really made a difference. And so they're like, well, we gotta like figure out a way to deliver it better, right? Because these, a jar or a sketchy syringe is not it. But anyway, Lindsay and Nate sort of took that experience and said, there's a lot of people out there that could really use cannabis as medicine. They can't afford it. We can't really afford it either because we're a scrappy startup, but we're going to figure it out. And at one point, at the height of the Shelter Project, this is kind of before a bunch of regs came crashing down when it became adult use legal. We were serving more than 1,000 patients a month. And this is back when we could like UPS them cannabis, like send them cannabis in the mail in California. And, some of the stories are just, I'll get emotional if I talk about them, but it's this really amazing program. And it's, Jetty had no right to do it in many respects because it was a struggling small business, and to have this this philanthropic side project when the company was struggling to grow is just sort of an indication of the people that started Jetty and what they stand for. The Shelter Project is still operating. It's now operating on a lot more stringent regulations because you can't just mail weed to people now. And in January 2018, it basically had to shut down while we lobbied the California Congress to introduce a bill that is a compassion bill that would allow this to happen again. And now Jetty has set up partners throughout. The Shelter Project has set up partnerships throughout the state at key retailers where you can register for your medicine through Shelter Project and then go pick it up at, say, Harborside in Oakland or Urban Leaf in San Diego. And they're growing it again. And we're looking at sort of spinning Shelter Project off as its own nonprofit, where other brands and interested parties can donate to it. So it's still a key part of our business. It's been challenging to grow it. Dablicator stepped in and really sort of, part of our proceeds are going to the Shelter Project throughout the year. So it's this really cool program that I'm proud of. And one goal would be to try and replicate it outside of California. And I think Dablicator and Jetty CBD have an opportunity to do that because we have touch points outside of California.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hemp's legal, right, throughout the country.
Yeah.
The 2018 Farm Bill. So that would be a great spin-off, as you mentioned, to expand into hopefully all the states. You know what I mean? Because that's such a great initiative that you guys have. People need their medicine, and like you said, cannabis can be expensive for those especially affected with the pandemic now.
Right.
And as we're seeing, these patients and these consumers need the plant more than ever, right? Because of the usage and how we've seen sales skyrocket during this time. So that's a great initiative. Anything that I can do to help in terms of awareness or links and whatnot, just send them my way. I'm happy to share. So.
You got it, man. Appreciate what you're doing. I mean, you're helping. You're part of the solution to take the stigma away from this amazing plant. And it's becoming mainstream, which is super cool. It can help so many people. It's a great, it's a great alternative to opiates. It's a great alternative to alcohol. It's an exciting and fun industry to be involved with, as you know, and I'm really kind of blessed to be able to be part of it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the kind words. I feel fortunate and blessed to be part of it as well. And that's the goal, man. I mean, we got to start legitimizing this industry, and because it has credibility, it has great people involved that are wanting to do the right thing. And, it needs to happen. I think I posted on LinkedIn and Twitter yesterday, like, there was an article from Bloomberg saying that executives basically don't frown away from entering the pot industry now, the cannabis industry, right? There's more players coming from outside industries into this one, and so
right.
My message was, hey, the corporate world needs to come out of the cannabis closet at this point.
Right, I saw that. Yeah, that's killer.
It's time, and I made that jump at the end of March. And look, I wasn't sure at first, when doing it, but I'll tell you what, I've been embraced with open arms in the industry, and everybody's been so supportive, and it's been great, man. I'm really blessed. So thank you for the feedback.
Right on, brother.
Cool. Well, hey, Mike, I really appreciate your insights today, and I know that our listeners got a lot out of it. So I look forward to having you on as things develop with your company in the next year. So thank you.
Yeah. Hey, man, thank you. And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's a big part of, the ecosystem. And let's hook up after the show. I'll be happy to get you out some product to try, get your feedback. And, anytime you would like to have me back. And frankly, I'll talk to my guys at Jetty. I mean, some of them have just, like Nate Ferguson, they have some great stories, and I think you might enjoy chatting with them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm open to that. And I can't wait to try the Dablicator, man. I'm going to do it in my coffee first thing.
Right on, brother.
Cool. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
All right. Cheers.